Happy Black History Month, my dearest sister. And I heard that, you step into your blackness very well.
I do.
And it started, or I'm assuming it started with college when you're an African American Studies degree. You have one of those from Stanford. Can you talk about why you chose an African American Studies degree?
Yeah. I think it was twofold. The first part was my first year, summer, first class I ever took at Stanford was African American Women's Lives. And I kind of just took it. I was like, I have to have X amount of credits for the summer. So I took it. And the amount of information that I learned strictly just on Black women was so much more than the entire amount of Black history I learned in the previous 18 years of my life. And so I was like, wow, if I learned this in 8 weeks, imagine what I could learn in 4 years or beyond. So that's what really got me in the direction. And then the second part was just the professor that I had that year. Her name is Professor Allison Hobbs, and she is the director of, or at the time she was the director of African and African American Studies. So she just was amazing. She taught me so much. She ended up being my advisor for the program throughout my whole 4 years there. So those are probably the two biggest reasons.
I love that you took it seriously as a discipline because people don't realize we have politicians right now that are saying that African American Studies aren't accredited. It's just I don't know if you've heard the news because my mentor Ebony K. Williams, she studied Black history in college, and she's I think she has a degree in it from UNC Chapel Hill, and she was saying how it took her to the legal field. It took her into law, and it's troubling to me that they don't even want to teach us about our past, in school. I didn't learn it. When I tell you, I learned all of my Black history from Chelsea Miller, and she's an activist in New York.
Yeah.
And it had nothing to do with my standardized education. So what made you take that first class to even want to step into that?
Right. What you just said is the craziest part about life to me. This past week I did a Black Heritage Trail in New London, and I was talking to one of the directors, and basically we were just discussing how this is not taught in Common Core curriculum. Black history is not taught in that. You have, your little bit on MLK, your little bit on Rosa Parks, and then a sprinkle of Malcolm X, and then it's all right. Back to American history. And so I knew that I wasn't very knowledgeable about my own culture, Black history, Black community, things like that. And so I think that's what kind of said, okay, let me just take this class. But I had no idea that it would propel me to wanting to study this for a degree and a career.
Child, what's wild to me is they try to paint MLK to be this completely peaceful person.
Girl.
But they don't realize he was assassinated.
Don't get me started.
You don't. No, let's start because there's so much layered in here because the way we're taught about our history is through the lens of people that don't concede to discomfort. They don't like to be uncomfortable learning about the past. I want you to speak on that a little bit. And who in your studies have you learned about that you were like, this is a change maker that isn't an obvious one?
See, that I took a whole class on MLK. That's the cool thing about Stanford and the courses. We get to decide our own schedule. So even as athletes, you don't have an advisor who picks out your classes for you.
Not to throw you to the wolves.
Yes, to the wolves. So if classes open at midnight, you better be on that computer at midnight.
That's crazy. They treat y'all real regular as athletes. Dang,
exactly. Yeah, but it's twofold. It is all right, I really got to be disciplined, locked in, but it's also I get to decide what I want to take. And hopefully, you can go to the advisor and see if it matches up with the credits you need, but you get to decide. And so actually Simone Manuel, her and I were the only two Black student athletes who studied African American Studies while we were at Stanford. So that was super cool that we took that class together. But I think, Coretta Scott King, she did so much for the movement that nobody ever knows, wrote so many of the speeches. She was the backbone of that. And because she's a woman, a black woman, she's not going to be put at the forefront of these speeches and these movements and these rallies and all these things. I would say Ella Baker. She was huge in the SLCC conference and all of those things. I would say Claudette Colvin. She was the real first Rosa Parks. She didn't get the notoriety and the recognition because she was unwed. She was a teenager. She was pregnant. She wasn't as fair-skinned as Rosa Parks. And so she got overlooked. Then a few weeks later, Rosa Parks does the same thing that she does, and it's all right. Like, Rosa Parks started this movement of I'm not going to give up my seat. But no, it's because Rosa Parks was married. She was older. She was lighter skinned. And she was known in the community and the church and all of those things. So I think there's a ton of people. Obviously, I listed just women, but there's men too.
And that's fine. Because
I'm not
that's
biased.
fine.
Right. But
Yeah.
there's so many women who were just so overlooked. Harriet Jacobs. I could go on. Yeah.
Being the backbone of society. I think black women are the backbone of society.
Yeah.
And without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
But being that we have a lot of pressures and a lot of, just triggers, and there's so much weight. But what's so dope about being a black woman?
Yeah. I think it's the community, first off. Like, you walk into a room and you see another black woman, it's just like, I feel a little bit more at ease. Right. It's just like, all right. Like, I feel a little bit more comfortable. Like, everything just eases up a little bit. Mm-hmm. But also, I just think it's our culture. And clearly, society thinks that, too, because they try to take everything of our culture.
Ooh.
But I think that's the most fun part for me. There's so many commonalities across the black community, regardless of all the other differences, where we grew up, our like parents, how they raised us, what type of school, what type of environment, who we were around. I think there still are a bunch of commonalities. And it's funny, like on Twitter and Instagram, they post like, we all had the same childhood, or like we all grew up the same. And it's like little things that it's like, you remember from your childhood, but you thought it was unique to you and your family, but it's not.
My
It's like
favorite is
a
the
whole
Black Thanksgiving, or like even the whole hashtag growing up black was hilarious.
Yes.
But the Thanksgiving one was just spot on.
It is. If anybody looks up growing up black, I'd be like, oh my gosh. Like, and I grew up, 2-parent household in the suburbs of San Diego, California, and I still have the same experiences as someone who grew up in the South, completely different lifestyle, or in the Midwest, like completely different. So I think it's amazing how our culture travels throughout the whole community.
I'm glad you mentioned it because suburbs, 2-parent household, you were pretty well off, and I was too. Mm-hmm. And I want to know when you realized your blackness, because for me, I have a very different experience than my best friend Krishan. Same neighborhood, same situation, very different experiences. So when did you realize your blackness?
I would say, I don't know how old I was. I was like maybe 10, probably 9 or 8 though, somewhere around there. And I was at my sister's game at a school in San Diego, well-known school. And they were playing. My mom was the coach. My dad is her assistant coach. So my parents are both on the bench. Sister's playing. My brother somewhere, we was Healy Kings and Queens, so he was rolling around somewhere. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting in the stands watching the game. And I'm sitting around like here. There's a trash can on the ground here. Mm-hmm. And so there's a group of white boys sitting behind me. And they're throwing trash into the trash can, and they hit me, right? And I like turned, and I'm like, you hit me, like, hello. Mm-hmm. And the one boy goes, oh, good, you made it in the trash can. Mm-hmm. And I think after I really I told my dad, obviously, and that was like the moment for me where it was like, oh wow, it doesn't matter who my parents are. It doesn't matter who I am. It doesn't matter what I have on. At the end of the day, the meta language of all of this is race. And I think that was the moment that I really realized that. And it stuck with me, 15 years later.
That's infuriating.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's infuriating. And it's funny because you're in shock when things like that happen to you, right? I remember learning, I just got back from Tulsa, and we learned all about the Tulsa massacre, the riots. They're not riots, but what happened in Tulsa. And some people from the group were saying, like, if I was there, I would have done this. But you're in such shock. Like, how do you process that level of racism? How do you process, the trauma that we endure? How do you make reason for it, and what action do you do when you encounter things like that?
It's so hard because it's it's live, and it doesn't, you don't have the time to like go back, think, okay, what should I do, what can I do, what's legal, what's not, like what's going to be palatable and people are going to understand, like, yeah, this is a correct you don't have the time to think about those things. So I think it's hard, and especially depending on how many times you've encountered racism or massacres, things like that, watching them. I think that also determines how you respond. But for me, I was just so young, naive to racism. I feel like California is very much so a melting pot. We have every race, every gender, every sexuality, every ethnicity, all in one small space. So I had never really even thought about how I would respond if I encountered something like that. So I think my response was literally like pure shock. Like, I cried. I went and told my dad. Like, I went across the court to my parents and told them what happened. Like, I didn't know how to respond.
And palatability is one word that's stuck to me. I want to go back to the historical figures that you said you looked up to, and the respectability politics behind that, and how things people are digestible. Can you just dive a little bit more into that, and how we remember what we want to remember, we hold a standard for what we want to hold, and just overall white fragility versus black excellence?
Yeah. I mean, starting with the respectability politics aspect, I think that's something that a lot of people don't really know about, but we all see it every day in our lives. And what respectability politics really means to me is, if you fit in the box, you will be shown. I mean, you see it with sports in our own league. You see it with pop culture. You see it with everything. You celebrate what fits your mold or model of what it should look like. And so with the movement that I talked about earlier, I think it was first men, white men, older white men, married. You know what I mean? It's there's a hierarchy of respectableness based off of just our own stigmas. And dark-skinned women don't get the love. Black women don't get the love. Anyone who is not thin doesn't get the love. If you don't have curly hair or straight hair or white girl good hair, like, you don't get the same love, notoriety, and I think fame that you should. And it's been forever. Literally forever.
Whose responsibility is it to break that? Because I know we have it within our own community. We have it like all those situations you were describing. Who's responsible for it? Who's accountable? Who's taking accountability? Who should be the one to push it?
It's a really, really good, hard question. And I actually did like a research-based analysis on this topic, and there really wasn't an answer for me. I talked about a twofold responsibility, because I definitely think it is our responsibility as black and brown people to uplift one another. There's so much black on black crime, black on black hate, colorism within our community, and that needs to be completely eradicated in uplifting one another.
Reparations.
Right, and then that's the second part. White people. Non-black people, white people. I think it's their responsibility to educate themselves. The answer can't keep being, oh, we didn't know. oh, no one ever told me that that was bad. Oh, no one ever taught me that this is wrong. No.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's manuals, books out there. When you learn how to drive a car, you read a book. You study, you take the test, right? I mean, the test is live for this instance, but there are so many books. There's journals.
That was a bar. I'm sorry. The test is live. I'm sorry. Go
The
ahead.
test is live, and your study tools are YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, podcasts, journals, research-based arguments. I mean, there's numerous options for people to learn, but they have to go out of their way, yes, to learn. But I feel like that's with anything that you care about, that you want change with. You have to go out of your way and sometimes go the extra mile, take the extra step if you want something to actually happen.
I'm still stuck on the bar.
Life is the test.
Life is the test. And you were
is.
tested when you were younger.
Yeah.
And that I'm sure it forever changed you. So I know the moment you realized your blackness, but when were you stepping confidently as a black woman? What was that? Do you have a specific moment, or when did you feel like
most empowered?
Yeah.
That's tough. I feel like my whole journey through Stanford, not even sports, just through education there, was probably when I came into myself as a black woman. Obviously I always identified as black, knew I was black, blah blah blah, but I don't think I really resonated with blackness. I mean, until I got there and actually learned about all these life experiences that I've had are common throughout the black community. I'm thinking I'm just going through this because I'm me. I don't know. But learning that this is something that has been repeated through history and is going to continue to be repeated if people don't actively seek change. I think that was that time, 2016, 2020-ish, through there.
I went to school in the South, and we're a lot less of a melting pot. But I know a question that I was commonly met with was, what do you mix with?
Right.
And it's
my God.
It's funny because it doesn't come out of genuine curiosity. It comes with justification of
you're too pretty.
Yeah, it's like a digestible palate to people. And I said, just like I remember Taylor Rick said this too, and this has always been my mindset. Anything you find beautiful in me, attribute it to my blackness. Yeah. And so I want to know if you had any experiences like that, because I'm looking at you. It's like it's that same type of situation where I could see that people probably would have asked you that growing up, and what was your answer to it, and what are your experiences with that?
Yeah, that's good. It's common. I think if you're not darker brown skin or only wear your hair in its 4C state, then people are going to assume that you're mixed with something, because they have this idea of what a black woman should look like and is. And when you don't match that, then there's, okay, it has to be something else. As opposed to retraining your thinking of, we are not a monolith as a black community, as black women. There's a ton of different ways we can look, we can talk, we can walk, we can do anything. But if it doesn't fit that mold, they can't grasp it. I don't know. I've definitely experienced that. What do you mix with? You're too pretty to be black. You're too pretty to be just black. All of those things. And it's interesting because they think it's a compliment.
They really do. My realization of blackness, it was light. I was like, realization light. And they were like, hey, if I were to be a black girl, I would want to be Ari. She's the prettiest black girl I've ever seen. I'm just like, it rubbed me the wrong way. It sounds like
a compliment, but
it's
not
backhanded.
Yes.
Or like,
even if it's a compliment to me, I feel like not at the expense of throwing shade at every other black woman who doesn't look like me skin color wise.
It's wild.
Yeah.
And I'm confused going, in the good year of 2023, how the things that we had to grow up defending, like, our style, our hairstyles, our lips, everything is now trendy. So,
girl,
the trends that you see online and the history that you know behind it, can you speak to some of the reasons why black women wear their hair like like how we wear it, or why we dress the way we dress, or what accessories we choose. Like, I know you probably covered that in Stanford, and you're a lived experience through it. So just talk about some of the Black trends that are out there.
I think this is one of the things that gets me like so riled up. I don't know why, but it will continue to get me every single time. And I'm someone that anytime I see it, I'm gonna point it out. You can ask the people who I hang out with. I know they be sick of me, like, dang, just let them live. And I'm not gonna do it. I'm not, because we didn't get to. You know, those were the reasons why we were getting killed and enslaved. And I think that people think that they can take ownership of that and reframe it, but they can't. White people can't, because they never had any type of ownership of it before.
Isn't that a weird juxtaposition between like the ownership of our culture and the ownership of us too? Like,
yeah, right. Like, we can just like the N-word. It used to be used only as derogatory term, negative, but I think as a Black community, we have taken ownership of that word, reframed it, retrained it, and changed the use of it to something that is actually an uplifting word in a sense to the community. I mean, it's like when we use it, it can be like homie, you know, and I don't think that Black or white people understand that they don't have that privilege because they can't take ownership of a word that was never used to condemn them. And so, I mean, I think that with Black culture, hair, lips, anything like hips, like all of it, I think it's crazy that calling the French braids or whatever boxer braids.
It's wild.
Like,
did you see what they recalled it, do-rag? I forgot what they renamed it. I forgot what it was called, but it was like on Versace for like $3,000. It was wild. It was wild.
All of these things, like I took a Black fashion class, and it was all beads, hoop earrings, all of these things, the braids, cornrows, were used during slavery. It either, you know, it showed, okay, I belong to this family, some of the jewelry, or the braids had maps for the Underground Railroad, or for like a slave, the route for them to be free, the map, it was in their braids. And so for white people to think that they can just take that, I think it's insane. Especially, they don't even acknowledge the history of it. I think they just see it as like, oh, it's a new trend. But to us, it's so much deeper than that, because of all of the pain and infliction that those things caused us in the past from the people who are now taking it.
Something I hear from a lot of people is just let it go. Just let it go.
It was so long ago.
I want to stay with fashion for this one with the just let it go though. When do we share? When do we let it go? And when do we gatekeep our culture?
Never and always.
And that's what it is. It's mama's this thing.
Because how are we supposed to let it go? Those lives, those people ain't coming back. The kids are not going to be reunited with their families. All the people on the boats, from the ships, from the slave trade, they're never going to get those minutes, those moments, that time back with their family. So I mean, for someone to say just let it go, and I think that goes with a lot of things. I'm not saying these are on the same level, but I'm saying with anything, with the Holocaust, with things like that, you can't just let it go, because those people can never come back.
What's traumatizing to me is the uprooting of just our history in general, and the equal playing field doesn't exist for us. And as privileged as we can be now, the generational wealth is generations past what the white potential is, right? So what to you do you see as a future for Black families? Do you think that we'll ever catch up to you know, us not having that land, not having those companies, or we had them and they burned down, but like they were taken away from us? Where do you see us catching up, or do you see us catching up?
Honestly, I love this question, but I think I don't think it's possible. Because though, yes, we're climbing the ladder, we're both climbing the ladder. Even if at this point in time in 2023, we can climb the ladder at the same pace. They started steps ahead. So there's no way, to catch up to someone who starts steps ahead and you're moving at the same pace. So for, like you said, it's been generations on generations on generations of wealth that just keeps being passed down. So those kids who are born in 2023, their wealth is probably already at step 5. A lot of the black kids, though, their parents are starting to build that for them. They're still here. They're starting here. So I personally don't think that we can reach the same level of generational wealth. I think on Earth, maybe, but not to be passed down to kids. And like I said earlier, race truly operates as a meta language. And so us as black women have that twofold. Race, discrimination, black, gender, discrimination, woman. And then just add anything else into there. Sexual orientation, how you present yourself, what you wear, hair color, hair texture, lips, nose, all of these different things, but we already have the two biggest ones. Race being something we can't change, and gender, I don't know.
I want to speak on privilege though, because a lot of people say that like, oh no, you're fine, like again alluding to the wealth. But privilege comes from a state of like, you could be worse off, but the life isn't. The color of your skin doesn't put you at a disadvantage. Like the world is catered to you for you to succeed. Right. So, why can't reverse racism exist and privilege it? Like, let's dive into what privilege means too.
Okay, reverse racism to me cannot exist because there has to be some exchange of power. Some form of power has to be had for you to be able to be racist to another group. And I don't think black people have the power to be racist because we don't have power over white people. And so that's my opinion. I don't think black people can be racist. I think we can be prejudiced.
Yeah. Yes.
I think we can be prejudiced. I think we can be mean. But
even discriminatory
for sure. But racist, no, we don't have the power to be racist towards white people, and that's just that. As far as privilege, what do you mean by it?
So I've seen on these interwebs saying that we have privileges that white people don't, and it almost takes me back to the whole racism thing versus reverse racist. I can acknowledge that I have certain privileges, but as far as a system that is built against me,
we can never.
So it's like, I guess my question would be, knowing that you do have certain privileges, how do you manage those, and how do you figure out a way to navigate life when you have racism against you but privilege for you?
I think using the privilege that we have, obviously, to keep uplifting our people, but I don't know. I don't think that privilege will ever overshadow the race part. And you see that with celebrities who still get pulled over for crazy things or who still get mistreated when they go places simply because they're black. I think if any of us in the league, less recognizable people, walked into somewhere, the black people in the league, walked in somewhere, we're going to be treated as though we're black. Even though our profession is a professional basketball player, or regardless of how much money's in the bank, when we walk in somewhere, they see us as a black individual. They don't see, oh, this is XYZ. She has this much money in the bank. She does this for a living. Her parents, two-family household. She has a very stable life. No, they don't have time to do all that. It's a split second, just like cops. And they talk about it all the time. It's a split second decision of, is this person a threat to me or not? And the first thing that they look at is your race, whether we like it or not. So all of that privilege goes out of the window, in my opinion.
I know that you weren't in the league in 2020 when
Right.
everything was, when Black Lives Matter actually was presented to people.
Yeah.
like it had, we haven't marched
When
for
people
years.
found
like
out
when
about
people
Black
just go, oh,
Lives
this
Matter.
is a Black Lives Matter situation. But you still had to put on a uniform on for an America that didn't regard you as a human at that point. And still, we got a long way to go. How are you able to show up for a society that you have all this weight against you?
Yeah, that's hard. I think that even at the time, it was when I had transferred to Baylor. So coming from California
Good old
to Texas, it's a complete culture shock, just as far as like political stuff. And it was like a very heavy time for that too. And I don't know anybody in Waco, so I'm there, like, it's the summer. I'm just going to get my nails done, and I see two big pickup trucks pull up with Keep America Great, or Make America Great, or whatever it said. Keep America Great, I think, and freaking guns on their hip. Like, I'm sick. What?
Okay then.
I'm like,
California.
open carry, all of this. Like, you rarely, there's certain areas, but you know where not to go in California where you're going to see those types of things. It's everywhere in Texas. And so I think I was just like, wow, like, this is real life. People actually think that what's going on is okay, is good, and should be continued. And I didn't see that in California because everyone there was like, get them out. Like, Black Lives Matter protests it was crazy. In support of Black Lives Matter. Then in Texas, it was the opposite. So I think that was like hard for me to try to navigate through a whole new phase of life. But as far as trying to like play for a country that doesn't have regard for me, I think it's hard. I think it's just a balance of making sure that I still make sure my voice is heard and my teammates' voices are heard. But it is a business at the end of the day, and I'm going to play.
Money.
Exactly.
And you love it.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Exactly. I don't think I want to compromise my beliefs and what I stand for. So anytime I have the platform or the opportunity to make sure my voice is heard for our community, I'm going to do that. Or go out of my way to make sure that happens. But I think it's just a balance.
We're on the basketball topic, and I know we mentioned historical figures that you loved.
Yeah.
Who are some Black athletes that are Black history? Who defines Black history for you in the athletics realm? The Black athletes that entered into spaces with high barriers of entry are like the Black history figures for me. So Dominique Dawes in gymnastics.
What sport? Okay.
Where she was in the Olympics when it was a time where it wasn't Black girls dominating, right? This is like the Russian reign of the Olympics, and it was a very white dominated sport, and just for them to, or
Simone too.
No. Gabby Douglas.
Yeah.
So I think gymnastics has a really, really big representation in Black history, and beyond that, like Natasha
Serena.
Watley. Yeah. So okay, we have Venus and Serena,
who
really, really changed the mold of what Black people were allowed to do.
Probably
and so
Serena for real. And, I mean, both of them, but just because of the heights that Serena reached. Okay.
No, like I just feel like in Natasha Watley in softball, I know a lot of people aren't really aware of her story, but just knowing that these Black athletes were able to break into their sport in a time where it just wasn't accessible to us. Like, it just wasn't. I remember growing up, I was a competitive cheerleader, and the price point for competitive cheerleading starts at like $400 a month, right?
Wow.
And it's just, the barrier of entry is a lot, and then that's plus travel. You still have travel on top of that.
And they do that on purpose.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And I'm like waiting for the days where it's like going to be like Black surfers everywhere. I mean, we're up and coming, but those boards are expensive, and it's just like the barrier of entry to sport for Black people is very difficult. If you ain't like if you ain't got the means to do it because of a result of all this Black history is wild to me. But
that is so true. That is so true. And even in life, like just for health wise, like they'll put the McDonald's, the Burger Kings, the Carl's Jr., and like the liquor stores.
Food deserts are very real. Food deserts are very real.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even make for you to be able to be an
athlete.
Exactly.
You got to go out of your community to get an apple.
It's wild. It's wild to get like the produce. People don't realize how much geographic placement plays in the part of what you can accomplish in life.
Yeah.
Like food insecurities, food deserts, performance-based like necessities when you are playing sport too. Like going back to the sports thing, it's just wild to me.
It is.
And I can't imagine like how it was for Dominique Dawson in like late 80s, early 90s to enter into, she's from Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what I mean? I can't imagine what it's like to enter into a sport that I wasn't competitive in gymnastics. I did gymnastics, but like I can assume it's a similar price point to cheer.
Oh yeah. And you know they what 4 or 5 years old or whatever.
Yeah.
They end up not even going to high school and stuff, just traveling. No, I can't imagine how much that probably is.
Why do you think black people choose basketball?
So when we were just talking about tennis, gymnastics, swimming, sports where you have to have a lot more equipment. When you think of tennis, when I think of tennis, I think country club. Mm-hmm. And when I think country club, I think white and rich. Mm-hmm. And when I think swimming, I think white because black people don't like to get their hair wet, or black people can't swim, or pools are expensive. So I think
or water's traumatizing because our ancestors had to cross that.
True, yeah, that too. I think white. Mm-hmm. When I think of gymnastics, I think white, and so
which is wild. Now,
I know
because it's like
I know
we're dominated.
It's true. I think it's transitioning, but just as far as like facilities wise, I think affluent. More so. Maybe.
No, it's white because the leotards to shape our bodies. People don't think about stuff like that. But keep going.
So I would say basketball, soccer, football are sports that are more prominent in the black and brown communities because you need less equipment. You have parks with basketball courts and a hoop. I mean, all you need is a ball now. Soccer, all you need is a ball, some grass. Football, it depending on what position you play, you might not need any equipment. I mean, except some grass if you're a lineman or something and gotta, do that. But as far as equipment wise, you don't need much for those 3 sports. And so I think that they're tailored to more low income communities, which as of right now in this country are black and brown communities. So I think that that's why you see so much prominence in those sports from black and brown people.
Who are some of the black athletes that we should be paying attention to? And you can include yourself.
Black athletes we should be paying attention to. Ooh. Well, I want to start with Simone. I think Simone Manuel is incredible. I just saw her story about people telling her that she was being lazy and she just didn't want to work hard and all these things, but when in reality she was actually overtrained. And I think that it was huge for her to put a story like that out, especially for us women in the W who typically play year round. We play the W season and then a lot of us go straight overseas and then within days are back here in camp to start it all over again for years and years and years. So I think it was huge for her to say that. And also, like we were talking about before, to break into a sport that is not made for us. I don't know how many other black women you see at the top in the world in swimming have ever seen. So I think that was super special. And like I said, she also is very much so in tune with her black roots, whether that be me actually knowing her through school or just knowing what she studied or just like the content that she puts out, they started together, her with Sue and there are 4 of them. So I would say her. I would also say, I'm trying to think of who in the W. I think there's a ton of people in the W, actually. It's definitely the sport that you see the most advocacy from black women, in my opinion. Not biased.
You can't be. I'm biased because I think that a league of 80% black women.
Yeah, at least.
I mean, just to have that display of excellence, because it's funny. The W is the longest-standing women's professional league in the country, and that resilience isn't by coincidence, right? And And a lot of times y'all are overlooked in so many different facets because you're compared to your male counterparts.
Right.
Women's leagues, you have comparison of about expansion and things like that, but
Right.
it's just, there's a reason why it's going on 28,
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason for that, and there's a reason why when y'all speak, we listen.
Right.
And so I just want to throw in that little tidbit.
But can't be
Keep going.
biased.
But keep going. There's a reason why y'all can shape shift everything that y'all put your mind to, and I think that's really special.
We come together.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a huge thing. Like, it's not, you don't really see one person just trying to do things on their own in this league. Everyone comes alongside them, and I think we ride for each other in that sense. So yeah,
That level of unity is dope.
it is.
What else is dope is that we have a month that we can celebrate Black History. So the significance of Black History Month to you, and why it needs to be celebrated every single day.
I mean, just take a look around the world. It's all Black culture or appropriated of Black culture. And so everyone wants to wear it, everyone wants to be it, everyone wants to look like it, everyone wants to listen to it, everyone wants to watch it, everyone wants to meet it. And by it, I mean Black culture, Black movies, Black music, Black films, Black athletes, Black actors and actresses, entertainers, all of it. So I mean, if that's what people want, then why are we not going to celebrate it? I think it doesn't make sense to me. And I mean, why we got the shortest month is a whole other topic.
28 days and 29 on some good years.
We had so many options of months.
And
they
but
chose
here we are.
the shortest one. But I mean, yeah, I think it needs to be celebrated every day, because we come into contact with something that was either appropriated from Black culture or that Black people invented or laid down the groundwork, the framework for, that we don't even know.
I always tell people I wouldn't want to be anything else but a Black woman.
As hard as it is.
Period. Why do you love being a Black woman?
And this is my unbiased opinion,
You could be biased, girl.
I just think don't nobody do it like us.
And don't.
In any category. I mean, and you see that in the world, because what Black women have and naturally are is what so many people today, especially in the entertainment industry, are trying to emulate. And that's just how God made us naturally, And so it's like, well, clearly we're doing something right if everybody want to do it. So yeah, I love it. I love our culture. I love Black women's energy. I just love our aura. And I love getting compliments from other Black women and like pretty Black girls or like older Black women, I love it. It's just like, it makes me feel so warm.
It's like a
and
warm
I'm like, it's so good. Thanks, Auntie. Like, I don't know. It's just different. Like, we just connect on a different level that it's not even possible to connect with someone who hasn't lived the same experiences. And by experiences, I just mean being a Black person, a Black woman in America, who haven't lived those same experiences as you.
Well, today and every day I celebrate you. I'm so glad you're my sister. And we're going to keep sprinkling on this to everybody.
All this melanin,
girl.
Forever.